Welcome to Terrific Talk. My name is Tom Anderson. Tom Anderson.
Play to win the game. Gone.
Tom Anderson.
Great cash, homie. Great cash, homie.
I feel ready to go another 9 innings.
Touchdown.
I feel ready to go another 9 innings.
Touchdown.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Sound going crazy.
Terrific Talk Podcast. Welcome back, Terrific Talk Podcast.
Here comes the hoe.
I'm your host, Tom Anderson.
First, behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
Welcome to Terrific Talk. I'm Tom Anderson. We've got a great podcast for you today, an All-American University podcast. I'm very excited to talk with Bram Weinstein, class of 95. Bram currently works for ESPN as an anchor on SportsCenter. Every time I'm watching SportsCenter with my friends and Bram pops up, I'm always screaming out, he went to American, he went to American. He's had a great career, and I'm proud to have him on as my guest. So, Bram, welcome to Terrific Talk. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I've been listening to you and reading your stuff for many years now, and I can tell you're passionate about sports and football. American University, unfortunately, doesn't have a football team. All we have are shirts that say AU football team, still undefeated. Did you ever have any regrets about going to a university with no football team?
Wow, that's such a hard question. Because I loved my experience at American University. So, do I rethink it every once in a while when football season rolls around? Maybe. A little bit. But I don't regret going to AU for a second. I mean, I had a great experience. I got to, remain in the city I grew up in, and I had great professional experiences, and, it took a long time for us to even get to the NCAA tournament. So there were some regrets there about not having any kind of major, sports program to latch onto. And the older I get, too, you meet people in different places, and someone went to Michigan or someone went to Syracuse. A lot of people I work with went to Syracuse or Northwestern now. And, just not having that, I understand what the meaning is. And if my child, my daughter who's 2, gets older and is interested in sports, I will point that out to her that is something that you can have for the rest of your life if you were to attend a school that makes that important. But I don't, for a second, I don't regret going to AU.
How did American University prepare you for your career into the world of journalism?
I think more than anything, being in Washington was very helpful because you get internships that you wouldn't get in other places. Like Syracuse is a great school, particularly for communication, probably the best in the country. But they can't get internships like I got. I mean, I worked with Warner Wolf, and I worked at Sports Talk 980 in its first year. I mean, the people who get real-world experiences are doing it in a small market. So they may have these great teachers and these great classes and this great alumni association that may help them find better entry-level jobs than AU, probably not by much, but a little bit. But they certainly they didn't have the real-world experience I had when I came out. And, that goes back to the ability to get us out in the field quicker and in positions where we can learn faster. I mean, I really believe this field, not to knock education, but this is really a field that you need to do. And that's probably true anywhere. I mean, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, you probably need to actually be in a courtroom or a hospital to really understand what it is. This cannot be taught in a classroom. I think you really need to do it. I mean, you can't practice interviewing someone. You just have to do it. You can't really practice being on air. You just have to do it. And I think, those type of things only happen in real-world experiences. And when you do it in a place like Washington, it's different than in the smaller market. I think you see the people who have succeeded to get to that point, and you understand why they were able to do that sooner and faster.
You talk about great internships that you were able to getting to ESPN 980, and when you were there, you pushed really hard to do play-by-play for Americans men's basketball team, and you actually got to do it for 2 years. How cool was that?
That was awesome. That was awesome. I haven't done a tremendous amount of play-by-play in my career. I'd actually like to do more, but I just haven't gone in that direction. But, of the times I've done it, there was nothing more fun than calling your alma mater. I mean, because I actually cared.
Yeah.
There's plenty of things I've gone to and covered I don't really care about. It's fun to be there. It's a great job, but I don't really care who wins or loses. I cared. I really cared if they won. And what was really cool for my experience was I called what was the freshman years of the team that ended up becoming the first team to go to the NCAA tournament.
Nice.
So I got to actually kind of see it, and I kind of knew it. I mean, I don't know how you know it, but you just know it. When you're around it every day, Jordan Nichols was a freshman, and Garrison Carr was a freshman, were just, this team had something. If they could keep all these guys from, motivated and wanting to play at AU, they'd have a shot to do that. Unfortunately, I was gone by the time that came to fruition, but it's really cool. And there's nothing like calling your alma mater. And I've actually told them, recently I said to them, if I ever come back and move back to Washington, D.C., I don't want you to ever think that it's something I still wouldn't want to do, because I would.
Another guy who had a pretty big stature in Washington, D.C., the great John Thompson, who recently retired from broadcasting. You just wrote a wonderful blog post about Coach Thompson and how he affected your life and career. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with the Hall of Fame coach?
In general, I really didn't think I knew him, in hindsight now. When he was hired, I only knew him as, this legendary coach who, to be blunt, and this is, really pathetic that I thought this way, I thought he hated white people, and, I just had that impression of him. I mean, there was never a white face on his team. He had, a boorish reputation in the media, which is predominantly white at the time that he was being covered. And his teams were described in ways that I don't think would be allowed now. I don't think people would get away with saying that Georgetown Hoyas are a bunch of thugs, and that would just go by the wayside, and people wouldn't look at that and go, why would you say that? Then that was commonplace to say that about them, and people just let it go. And I think Thompson, now in hindsight and watching that, recognized that he wasn't being treated fairly by the media, and that's why he didn't, give them the respect that they were due. Once I got to know him a little bit, initially, I'm 24, 25 years old. He's this Hall of Fame coach. I'm just, what am I to him? I'm really a nobody. He doesn't know who I am. I have no experience with him. I only know him, of his work because I lived in Washington. I never covered any of his games, but I don't know him at all. He just happened to have to put up with me because I worked at the same station with him. He doesn't know me. So the more, though, I did some reports for his show and got to kind of hang in the room and just listen to him, the more I realized that we got this guy wrong. I mean, way, way, way wrong. That there were reasons behind all the things he did. Like, the majority of his players were black, yes, but he was giving opportunities to people that were not necessarily going to get that opportunity to go to as good an accredited institution like Georgetown. And they weren't thugs. They were people that maybe came from a rough background, but he was doing the tough love act as a father figure, and look how these guys ended up on the other side. I mean, Alonzo Mourning came from a very, very tough neighborhood. Patrick Ewing grew up uneducated. And look where these guys are now. I mean, you can argue whatever you want about Allen Iverson, but I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that if John Thompson hadn't crossed paths with Allen Iverson, that his path might have been very different than what he ended up doing. So I found a newfound respect for him as a leader, as a teacher, as a community leader, and I realized that everything I thought about him, at least from a perception standpoint, was really wrong. And, he helped me personally in a way that I, felt compelled to write about and thank him for. If people want to read it, I appreciate that they want to read it.
Now, your career at ESPN, what went through your head when you first found out you were heading to Bristol to be an anchor at ESPN?
Couldn't believe they hired me. Couldn't believe it. Because, my background was radio. I wasn't really on TV, so I remember my agent had said to me, it was right after the last season that I ended up covering the Redskins. I covered them for 8 years. And he said, hey, do you have interest in ESPN? And I said, yeah, sure. But I mean, I was on TV a lot, but I wasn't an anchor. I mean, I was just on TV a lot as a guest. I'd come on and talk about the Redskins or talk about Washington sports, and I was doing this locally and nationally, but I wasn't doing what ESPN does. So I remember asking him, what do they want to hire me for? And he said, to be an anchor. And I said to him, I go, they know I haven't done that in 10 years, right? And I've never done it at a major station. I've never hosted a show like SportsCenter or, for that matter, the local news.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm a radio host, and they said, just go, he basically said, just go up there. I was going to go anyway, but he was like, just go up there and audition and interview with them and see what happens. He goes, they like you because you've been on as a guest with them numerous times. I had been. And I went up there, and I never thought I'd get the job, and I interviewed, and the interviews went great. I didn't audition, and I didn't screw it up. And, they said, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch. And I figured that was the end of it. And 2 weeks later, they offered me a contract. So I couldn't believe it, really. But it's worked out great.
Yeah, I'd say so. Now, initially when you first got up to Bristol and you were working with people like Stuart Scott and all the greats I'm sure you watched growing up as a kid, are you overwhelmed and intimidated? What's that whole experience like for you?
Well, they don't really do that to you early. I mean, like, you know, the first time I did a show with Stuart Scott was a month ago, and I've been here 4 years.
Okay.
So, you know, you see these people and you're around them, but they're not in the business of putting people on those types of shows very quickly. It is very, very rare. Unless it's someone who's already established somewhere else, that like Hannah Storm, comes in and there's already a gravitas, that type of person. That really doesn't happen. The first few times I did SportsCenter was a little strange. It's a little surreal, but you get over it pretty quickly and you realize you're just doing what you used to do. And, honestly, I honestly think that doing radio shows is harder than doing